So, good afternoon. It's 3 o'clock. It's the 1st of March. Happy St. David's Day. Get your daffodils and your leeks ready. It's the patron saint of Wales. It's their national day in Wales. And welcome to everybody. It's for Joe and Mike's guided tours of Edinburgh, award-winning. And it's a real pleasure to welcome you back to very, very sunny Edinburgh. So today we're going to take a walk through the modern art galleries. And we say galleries because here in Edinburgh we don't just have one modern art gallery, we have two. So we've got MOMA 1 and MOMA 2. We're just going to take a walk through some of the sculpture gardens here. The galleries are still closed to go inside and look at any of the exhibitions, but we are free to walk around the sculpture gardens here and hopefully you get to enjoy it. Now, the galleries themselves are part of a network of galleries throughout Edinburgh, and when you visit Edinburgh there is a little free shuttle service that will take you from the city centre to all of the galleries. So from the National Gallery in Princess Street to the Portrait Gallery in Queen Street and out here to the galleries here in the Dean area of Edinburgh. So we've got Mike behind the camera and Joe in front of the camera.
Hi guys. Hi.
So the first installation I want to show you is this beautiful landscape here. This is by one of the great artists or sculptors here. His name is Charles Jenks. He's actually from the United States. He came over to Great Britain. He had a house in London and a house in the south west of Scotland, down in the Dumfriesshire area. And he's well known for his landscape gardening and bringing in beautiful, beautiful shapes. And it's a mixture of water and just lovely, lovely rolling little hills here. Now, he's got this installation here at the Museum of Modern Art, MOMA 1, but he also has two much larger installations in another sculpture garden, which is in the west of Edinburgh, and that's called Jupiter Art World. I think he's actually a spectacular artist, and he brings in form and shape, mixes the natural environment, and gives this has been here for quite a few years now, and I think it's going to last a long time. And the people of Edinburgh love to come here during the summertime and just sit on the banks, especially in the evening, and have little picnics. Now, he's also famous because some of you may have heard of the Maggie Centres. The Maggie Centres were centres set up for people who were living with cancer. Now, his wife was called Maggie, and he designed these places for making a lovely place for people with cancer to go. A lot of it was self-help. There's a lot of holistic contributions from the artwork that he did as well. And so he's got a big place in the history and the art in Scotland. He died himself in 2019. So when you come down here, come and see it. He has made a real stamp. So if there's an American come over here to live in the UK, and he's made a great big contribution to the art content here in Scotland.
William Cross is starting a wee conversation. He's saying, does it look like a big puddle to anyone else?
Well, maybe you're not getting the three dimensions, but it actually looks gorgeous. There's three different little ponds there, and the soft rolling hills around it. Maybe it's the three-dimensional side, but it is gorgeous. Have a little look at it. Maybe you can Google it. Charles Jenks. He's a really, really great artist. So you get an artist like this building this great big statement. But I want you to take you around to another little sculpture that people always walk past. But I'm going to introduce you to one of our other artists, British artists here, who is well known. Her name is Tracey, Emin. And people always walk past this. It's not the bench as such. It's just up here on top of this pole. You'll see there's a little bird. And the concept behind this is because this is a lovely place and there's very little traffic, you can sit on the bench here underneath that little bird. You might just see the outline of the little bird at the top of the pole. Now, Tracey Emin herself was part of the young British artists, the YBAs, who came to prominence in the 1990s. You might have heard of Damien Hirst as well. The Tracey Emin was a winner of the Turner Prize, which is quite a prestigious prize for modern art. Tracey was kind of known as the enfant terrible. Well, they all were, Damien Hirst and Tracey, another group. We're going to look at another one quite soon.
This work is called Roman Standard, and I think there's a bit of a concept behind the naming of the work in that she was against military statues and commemorations of powerful people, and believed that, of course, the bird being a gentle creature it was kind of turning the idea of a Roman standard on its head to have the bird at the top.
Yeah, to have a beautiful, rather than the big war eagle, and when the Romans were marched through.
I believe this was Tracey Emin's first public art commission as well.
It is gorgeous. It's a beautiful little thing.
Yeah.
And to compare it to the vastness of the Jencks to this little thing here, it's taken it. The contrast is quite spectacular. But I want to show you the building here as well, because the building itself is a work of art. The building was designed by the architect William Byrne. Now, we've seen work by William Byrne before. He designed the Melville Monument, or the Dundas statue, which is in St Andrew's Square, and he also designed the Edinburgh Academy. And when you look at it, you see the classical neoclassical design that Edinburgh went in for. So this is built in the 1820s, maybe 1825. Competition by the architects in Edinburgh was extreme. There were so many neoclassical buildings getting put up here. This was actually designed initially as a refuge for fatherless children. And it was built by a man called James Watson, so it was known as the James Watson Institute. Not to be confused by the George Watson, which is another school, but this is the James Watson Institute. And itself was a work of art and became part of the modern, as the Scottish Galleries back in the 1970s, 1980s.
Just had a wee message from Neil Young saying that his brother was at Goldsmiths College in the same class as Damien Hirst.
Oh wow, brilliant.
So there you go. Yeah.
That's great.
Thanks for that information, Neil.
Yeah.
That's great to know.
That is great. It's great that people can share this as well. So have a look at that again, classical Edinburgh architecture with the neoclassical columns here, the pediment on top. It's just classic. On top of it, I don't know if Mike can pull it out here, but there is an electronic installation above the pillars here, and it lights up at night time, and it's by another Turner Prize winner called Martin Creed, and it reads, "Everything is going to be all right." Now I think that's a message for the 21st century. Everything is going to be all right. And when it gets dark, it lights up neon blue. Now you can't go through a sculpture garden in the United Kingdom without coming across a Henry Moore. And here we've got a Henry Moore here in the garden. It's one of the oldest sculptures in the sculpture garden here. Henry Moore was quite prolific after the war. His shapes are very well known, soft, almost feminine, but made from very hard materials as well.
It's nice the sun is coming out even a bit more.
Yeah.
It's still a wee bit cold, isn't it? But it's
a wee bit chilly.
Nice to see the sun.
Yeah. In fact, when we get into the sun, it's actually a lot warmer than we are in the shade at the moment. So this is called the reclining figure, and was donated to or commissioned by the museums here in 1951, and it was presented back to the Scottish Art Council. I think everywhere you go, in any sculpture garden, I think in Great Britain, you'll see a Henry Moore. But there has been an issue with some of the public gardens here, because some people are actually stealing, coming in and lifting the sculptures as well. So a reclining figure.
Just like to say something about Henry Moore, Joe. I mean, he was born at the end of the 19th century and he lived into the 1980s, and he came from Yorkshire. I think his father was maybe a coal miner, but very working class, and had very strong socialist principles. Very much, and because of that, he believed in community art. He believed that it was better to have art out in the outside, so that everybody could see it, rather than maybe going into a gallery, which can be a bit intimidating.
And there was a design to change as well, because they're made of bronze, and so bronze changes the form and the shape, and the colour changes as it ages, as it's exposed to the elements.
Said also a bit different for Barbara Hepworth, who you'll be talking about later, but Henry Moore didn't like the idea of standing figures too much, because he believed there was something weak about the ankles of a standing figure, and hence his specialism in reclining figures. And final comment. I won't say too
No,
much.
Mike is the artist here, so this is great. I'm great having the artist on board.
I'm getting the laptop in it. But the other thing that you might like to know, folks, is that he, coming from Yorkshire, there's a similarity there with the Yorkshire hills, the undulations of this figure. You can maybe see some similarities. And he was very aware of strength, and it's very sinewy, and that's just another thing. He was very wealthy, very well known man, and they often call sculptors like architects who doodle, like sculptures are doodles, but that's doing it a disservice. He lived very frugally. He accrued a huge amount of wealth, but he left most of his wealth to the Henry Moore Foundation, which is an educational and arts foundation, and I just think that's a measure of the person.
It's a measure of the person.
It's great, yeah.
And as I say, he was quite prolific in his work, and it's distributed out through a whole of the UK. You can see his work, not only just in the UK, you can also see it. I think there's a couple in New York as well, and public art in New York as well. So let's move on. We talked about Barbara Hepworth, another one of the famous British sculptors.
These people are really innovative internationally, although they were British. They had a huge legacy of influence all over the world, including the United States, of course.
So this is, it's called The Conversation with the Magic Stones. So again, it's bringing in that concept of the ancient people. And you'll see in Scotland, we do have a lot of the standing stones and the standing circles. And so she's bringing in shape and form, and she's calling it a conversation piece. And Hepworth herself was very much, again, into the bronze work. I find a bit of it almost totalitarian in regard, but it's also something you want to touch. It's everything about it, and I think it's to encourage you to touch it, because I haven't seen any signs don't touch it, but there are some in here that say please do not touch the sculpture.
I think that was the message that Henry Moore and Barbara Hepworth wanted to give was feel free to touch, because it's part of the experience of sculpture to have the engagement and appreciation through touch is so important. I think today in COVID times we're losing that sense of touch to our friends and loved ones and so on as well. So it's it's done in 3D, but you can also see the marks of the work that's been done here as well. And Hepworth and Moore were contemporaries of each other, so they would have known each other very, very well. Barbara Hepworth had associations with Cornwall in St Ives, where she worked, very beautiful coastal town, which was an artist community. She had twins, and they say this installation here, this sculptural installation, resonates with the three standing figures, if you like. If you were going to compare these to people, it would be the sculptor and her family. And they are polyhedrons, 8-faceted pieces. And I sometimes had an issue with that, because I thought there's not 8 sides in these, but if you actually look, she has cleverly segmented the facets of them. So you can go around, you're getting my shadow there, and she has divided up from the original 4-sided or 6-sided figure, if you like, or 5, because you've got the one at the top, the face at the top facing to the sky, and another 4 all around it. But you see how she has segmented and made other facets to it, and there are 8 facets on each of these, although sometimes it's quite hard to make it out, to see these. And it is the interpretation of art that sometimes is difficult for people to appreciate it. These are, I think it's conversation with, what is it? Conversation with the standing stones? Or something magic. Conversation with the magic stones. It's conversation with the magic stones. So you can actually connect with standing stones as well. And there are many stone circles around Cornwall. So she was influenced as well there. And of course we've got the connection with Outlander today. Of course, the Outlanders today. You touch them, and you might, if you touch them, you might end up in a different century. You might. We might. You might end up with fighting with the Jacobites again.
But I do love them, and I guess with the sun hitting them, and again made of bronze, so change over the days, and having the Henry Moore and the Hepworth together, it's just something quite special.
Yeah.
And we shall move on to.
We'll move on.
Again, she was one of the YBAs, the Young British Artists, and she's also a Turner Prize winner. When I was living in London, I lived in the East End of London, and she was famous for pouring cement into a house. There was a house, a derelict house, and she poured the cement into the house, filled it up, then tore the house down. And so it was almost like living, it was almost a house that was inside out, and it was very spectacular. It was only it was a temporary installation, but this is what she's done here as well. So
this is a good place to come for exercise, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
it's so extensive, the grounds, and you can social distance quite easily. Yeah.
And also it's part of the Dean Park, so you can actually go down to the Dean River from here. And again, there's sculptures continue all the way down to the river. So you get along. We did our walk along part of the Dean River, or the Water of Leith. And this is it's all interconnected. So you can actually walk around here and not actually go on a main road at all. So you can cycle here, and people come out here, and it's great that they've left it open for people to enjoy the parks, even during lockdown period. So this is again one of our Turner Prize winner here. So this is one that says you're not allowed to touch it. But this is Rachel. Is it Whiteyear? I think it is Whiteyear.
No,
And another Turner Prize winner.
I think it's Whiteread.
White.
I think it's Whiteread.
Whiteread.
Whiteread, yeah. I think she was the first woman to win the Turner Prize. We know that Tracey Emin won it, but
Yeah.
Rachel Whiteread.
And she won it for turning that house inside out. I think that was her.
That was her the one she's best known for, internal spaces, because I think
That's right.
as a child she used to step into the closet or into the wardrobe to hide, and she was making a comment on the internal space of the wardrobe. And there is another one called Breathe, which is a comment on the death of her father in the empty space underneath the bed where her father was. And her concept of taking inside spaces and making them solid originates from Pompeii.
Yeah.
Taking casts off the people's bodies, of course, who were enclosed in lava.
Yeah.
And I think she's fascinated with that idea.
Well, this one here is actually called Breathe as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very abstract. I think you need to know a lot of the time, a wee bit the background, and what is the concept of this, although it's interesting to see it in the natural environment, but, what is behind it? What was the artist thinking?
Exactly. And what's good about the museums here is that they'll give you a good little map and a document to walk you around, so that each one is explained as you go around it as well. So it's well done, and they've got little maps for the children as well. So there's children games that the children can play here and go around, and they get little stickers as they go around. So it's bringing art to the people, and it's just using up some fantastic space here in Edinburgh as well.
I think there's a social message too, Joe, about that house installation, because it was put into the East End of London, which was becoming a gentrified area.
Was indeed.
And she wanted it to remain there because it was a comment about people's living spaces, which developers just quite easily demolish. And it's part of the lives of these people, it's part of the social history.
Well,
so it's something that sometimes is overlooked. But when she put this up, the tabloid press actually hated it, and canvassed for maybe you covered that, canvassed for its demolition.
For demolition, it was only it was only temporary. But they all got that. Tracey Emin got the same thing, and Damien Hirst all got the press. It's so interesting. The press really went against him, and it was interesting at the time. It was actually beginning of the Tony Blair period. It was all Cool Britannia. It was all part of that Cool Britannia movement that went on at the beginning of the 1990s. And it's great, it's here.
It's fantastic. These people are really significant in the way Brit art developed,
Yeah.
Not everybody's cup of tea, though, I suppose. As art is, it's quite subjective a lot of the time.
Of course it is, of course.
Yeah.
So let's move on. We'll walk across through the gardens here, taking some nice whether you know the next artist we're going to talk about, we've mentioned before as well, and his name is Anthony Gormley. And he is famous for his sculptures of, again, statues. And when we covered the Water of Leith, when we're doing Stockbridge, Mike, you remember we looked down into the river itself and there's a statue in the river. There's 4 or 5 of them all along the river. Well, there's one here that's actually sunken into the pavement or the sidewalk. You see the daffodils are just about to burst into bloom. We're great for St David's Day, the national flower of Wales, the daffodil. Here, certainly feels like spring.
Feel free to ask questions, guys, and comment. We've got a lot of people watching from all sorts of different countries, but thanks for coming on. And we've got some daffodils here. Now,
if you ever take the train up from Scotland up to England, up the east coast, and you've got past Newcastle, the city of Newcastle, and just south of Newcastle, on the major motorway there's a huge statue by Gormley. It's called the Angel of the North. And I would highly recommend you Google it, because it is absolutely massive and it dominates the whole of the skyline coming up. They've got crocuses here, we've got daffodils coming up. It just certainly feels like spring is getting a move on here. I've actually got frogs in my garden now, so the frogs are...
Oh, wow.
That's my signal when the frogs arrive and the cat brings the frogs into the house.
No.
I know. I think we've got more frogs in the house than we have in the garden. So I wanted to put... I love this little lodge here as well. Again, attached. So this had been attached to the school. This had been the office for the school. It was a refuge for fatherless children. And this would have been a nice little lodge for the caretaker to sit in here as well. Again, done in the neoclassical style as well.
I think it became a gallery in the 1980s.
1980s, yeah.
Because the collection, including the Henry Moore, used to be down at Inverleith House.
That's right, in the
Botanical Gardens. Yeah. But it's,
his work again is all over the country. But we're quite pleased in Edinburgh. We've got, it's called there's 6 of them, aren't there, here in Edinburgh?
Yeah. It's part of an installation called 6 Times.
6 Times, yeah.
Yeah. I was actually part of an Anthony Gormley installation called One Another, where he was having people from all over the country stand on the vacant plinth in Trafalgar Square.
That's right.
And I was one of them lucky enough to get drawn to do that.
Oh, well done.
And I stood on top of it and played my bagpipes for an hour. And you know, I felt it difficult to go off it. You bonded with it. It's something that nobody will understand. You're looking over to St Martin's in the Fields in the National Gallery, and there was just something so special about that,
He also did his installations in the northwest on the beaches, where he sunk them into the beaches and people were phoning the emergency services because they thought the people were trapped when the tide was coming in, not realising that they're actually going to get covered by the tide. And so they alerted the Coast Guard.
You'd like that. Another thing is, this is a complete figure. You may just think it's a cut-off portion that's put onto the paving, but it's not. It goes right down. If you were to excavate this, which it might be done hundreds of years in the future or whatever, they would find the full figure. And it's also multiple casts of the artist's body. It's actually self-portrait, if you like, as well.
I know. People forget that it goes all the way down, and it's almost a life-size cast.
It's life-sized, yeah.
Now we're coming into the gardens of MOMA 2, or the Modern Art Gallery 2. Again, beautiful place to come. One of the major sculptures I want to show you here is from one of Edinburgh's own. Spoken about him before. His name is Eduardo Paolozzi. Doesn't sound very Edinburgh, but he was born here in Leith. And I always think his work is so muscular. You know, everything he does is big. Eduardo Paolozzi was born, he was of the 2nd generation Italian family. His family came over to Scotland from Italy in the early 1900s. Quite a tragic story with Paolozzi, because when the Second World War broke out, a lot of Italians, well, mainly the males, Italian men, were put in prison camps, because obviously Britain was fighting Italy as well with Mussolini in power. Although they were, Scottish, 100% Scottish, he was put in prison. But while he was in prison, his two uncles and his father, his uncle and his grandfather were also held in camps or the prisons as well. But they got released, but he was still in prison, and they boarded a ship called the Aradora, bound for Canada, and that was one of the first ships that got sunk by the German U-boats. So he lost his father, his grandfather and his uncle as they were trying to make their way on a ship with other Italian refugees to get to Canada. Now, this one is called the Master of the Universe. Now we did see some of his work before here in Edinburgh when we covered the Catholic Metropolitan Cathedral here in Edinburgh, because he's got big statues there, and the statues he's done there is dedicated to the big Battle of Monte Cassino in Italy at the end of the Second World War. Now there's big connections with Eduardo Paolozzi and MOMA too, because when Paolozzi died, he dedicated his whole workroom to Edinburgh. He gave the whole workroom, so everything was moved up here and installed in MOMA too. And he's also got this massive figure in here called the Vulcan, and again it's done on a huge scale. It's over 23 feet high, and they had to take out one of the ceilings to give it room, and because it covers 3 floors of the gallery in here, and it's a stunning piece of artwork. So this is really dedicated, a lot of it, to Eduardo Paolozzi. If you've been in London and you've been in the Underground, the tube system in London, if you go to Tottenham Court Road station, you'll see there's lots of mosaics there. That's by Eduardo Paolozzi as well. So you get this big muscular stuff here, and then you get that tiny little mosaic detail that he's done, but it's all tiny mosaic, but there's a big work of art. I think he's just astonishing, the stuff that he does. And you see a lot of his work. The Royal Bank of Scotland did commission quite a few bits from Paolozzi as well, so outside a lot of the Royal Bank of Scotland offices, you get these big, beautiful Paolozzi, again done in bronze.
Just doing a little panoramic view.
Yeah, get a view of the city. The skyline here is absolutely stunning. There's one of the areas we're going to cover later on. You can just see the spires of the St Mary's Cathedral as well. But it's excellent here, coming here where the sun shines. So the spires you see there is for the Episcopalian or the Anglican Cathedral. So we've got 3 big cathedrals here in Edinburgh: St Mary's Metropolitan, St Mary's Episcopalian, and of course St Giles up in the old town itself on the Royal Mile. So let's go in up here a wee bit. We'll actually walk in here, Mike. We're going through the garden so we can get this. We'll have a look at the building as well.
Beautiful day. Yeah,
gorgeous.
Just one of these just great days in Scotland where we know that spring is on the way, and yeah.
So the building we're looking at here, again, started off as an orphanage. And the designer here was Thomas Hamilton. Now, we've seen Thomas Hamilton's work before as well. In fact, only a couple of weeks ago, when we covered the Old Royal High School, that was a Thomas Hamilton structure. So again, Edinburgh, at the beginning of the 1800s, buildings like this were going up all the time. And we've mentioned before that when you see the neoclassical work, it tends to relate to art or education. If you see the Gothic work, it usually relates to religious buildings as a rule of thumb. So this one here was built initially as an orphanage. So across the road there, you got William Byrne building a refuge for fatherless children, and here we've got a direct orphanage here. It also became an education centre for teachers training for a while before again it was donated over to the arts.
I think there's a difference architecturally, because the one across the road that we've just been in is influenced by Greek architecture, and this one is more Roman architecture. You can see also at the top there's a clock, and that is from the old Netherbow port. When it was dismantled, it was brought here, so that clock at the top is quite something. Yeah.
And those towers are actually chimneys. So again,
yeah.
So you can just see that it looks like it's stuck on there, but it's like they've even ornamented the chimneys.
Right, I didn't know that.
And that to me is Gothic rather than Neoclassical. So it's putting that eclectic mix of the
different mixing.
Yeah, exactly. So, so those towers are chimneys.
Yeah.
Of course, they're not in use anymore, but they were chimneys when there was a.
It's quite imposing, and you may wonder what people are doing up the top of the terrace. There is a pop-up cafe where you can get your coffee, get your flat white and all that.
Now, one of the last ones I want to show you here is we'll take a little walk in the park. You can see people are out enjoying themselves out here with their kids and their animals as well. This is one of my favourite ones. This is by another Scottish artist. And although the message is, when we were in the last one, we had Martin Creed saying, everything's going to be all right. And then you get Nathan Coley, the Scottish guy, saying, there will be no miracles here. It just that contrast of like, the hope. And then you get the Scottish mentality, but there'll be no miracles here. But when I look at it as a haiku, one of these little Japanese 3-line poems. But actually I find it really positive, because if we go close to it, it looks like a fairground for me. It looks like something you see in a fairground, like you go and see the waltzers or one of these travelling fairs, all the light bulbs are on.
That's right, yeah.
And the way it's done is just gorgeous. And this is by Nathan Coley, who's a Scottish artist.
Beginning to the bulbs a bit, well, you can see them a bit more now illuminated.
Yeah.
Depends on the sun.
But it is lit up. It's lit up nearly all the time now.
Yeah.
And Nathan Coley did a big, huge installation of in the town of Stirling, and it was all again doing with light and light bulbs, and it was just a great specialist thing. So I just think this is, to me, I find it full of hope, rather than saying there'll be no miracles here.
Yeah.
But there's so many more sculptures that you could cover here. And it's just a pity we can't get into the buildings at the moment, because the buildings, there's a great collections of Scottish colourists that we have here, Peploe and the whole group of the different artists from the different periods, the Glasgow boys, the colourists. There's such a great collection here that's just being held in storage at the moment. And also I've been to some private exhibitions from private artists who've done great exhibitions here as well. But the space is great, and it's just showing that in Edinburgh, wherever you go, you're going to get a great eye full of something here. You get gorgeous buildings everywhere you go. It's a great place to walk around, plenty of space. Kids seem to be very happy here. They're all sitting in the sunshine, enjoying themselves. Some of them are quite loud, but it's kids being kids. Mike, is there anything you want to add?
I just want to say it makes me realise how important galleries are to me anyway, because being a practising artist also, I'm really missing the fact these galleries are closed. But in a day like this, just like Henley Moore, it's great that these artists wanted their work to be viewed outside, especially in these times. It's just it just is so good to come here and enjoy a bit of art and space,
safe public space. And Edinburgh is great for this. We've got so much green space, so many parks, and some of the parks have got more to see than others. But this place here is just such a peaceful, tranquil place to come and just enjoy yourselves. And it's important, especially when people are looking after their mental health during this particular period at the moment. But there is hope. There is hope coming along, and we all know that now. We know that the vaccines are getting rolled out. We know that figures are changing here, especially in Britain anyway. So I just think that come summertime, they were saying that they're going to be open. Everything's going to be open for public concerts again. Yeah. So that'd be a great step forward. Again, for a small country, we've got such a great art collection, not just in Edinburgh, but throughout the whole of the country. We've also got the National Portrait Gallery, and if you like your kings and queens and the history of the Scottish people, the National Portrait Gallery is also another gallery, but lots of other little private ones around the place.